from threatening to lick somebody's face.
That is good to know. At least we know you can do things other than count when you interrupt me in the beginning of the podcast.
Hey, you know what? Variety is the spice of life.
So
Absolutely.
today we're talking about face licking during the pandemic. Pro or con.
All right, now Susan Wazinski is going to like block our channel and send us to the YouTube, Facebook gulag system, and we're never going to see Doc again. She's going to disappear down the rabbit hole. So instead of all that noise, hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blaze podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. So without further ado, I've been practicing my tour guide voice. I am ready to go back if they ever open up and they need some docents. We're walking, we're stopped.
That means you have to be around people, JR. Are you capable of that?
No, I hate people. All right, we'll move on and we'll talk to Doug instead. So, Doug Burbey, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, a little bit. Well, that's kind of hard. So
I'll
try and shorten it. So I am actually a military brat originally. And I use my hands, as that's being pointed out to me right now on camera. But I actually grew up in Asia from about 6 years old till almost 18 years old. I came back to the States to go to college. My dad was an Air Force veteran inside of there. So I had no intention of ever joining the military. I wanted to be a marine biologist and work in the Caribbean and give scuba lessons to women in bikinis and hang out in the dive bar. It was going to be great.
So you've done some of those things.
I've done most of them until I woke up running a 50 caliber machine gun range in Grafenwehr, Germany, wearing an army uniform, wondering how the hell did this shit happen? So then somehow or another, I spent 20 years in the army, did a whole bunch of shit, been all over the world, mostly the crappy places that weren't a lot of fun. Watched trees grow in Bosnia, been to Iraq, been to Turkmenistan, which is one of the weirdest countries I've ever been to in my entire life, and realized I was wasting all that time in Bosnia when watching trees grow when I should have been writing books. So fast forward, after I retired, I became a Department of the Army civilian, and I was flying on planes back and forth across the country for hours and hours at a time and decided to start writing books, and that's what I did. So now I moonlight as a Department of the Army civilian, big bureaucrat, nonsense, program management stuff. It's all advanced technology, cyber warfare, electronic warfare, network systems, a bunch of yibby-yabbity stuff. But I write books, which is probably way more important and, to be honest, a lot more fun.
All right. Well, the next part of the introduction, dear listener, is how we found them. So this is between me and you, dear listener and viewers, because there are only a few of us out there. It's some serious stuff right now. It's classified. But I actually met Doug at a conversion therapy meeting I was hosting for Recovering Pineapple on Pizza Heretics. I'm happy to say that he's back on the straight and narrow, and he is at one with the pizza gods. He no longer pollutes his dreaded pineapples on pizza.
That's not what I saw.
Hey, that was green olives, pepperoni and green olives. It got me over the hump. I'm telling you, JR, it saved my life. Saved my life. Truly did.
Doc, he knows what's up. So how did you find him? Were you in the same self-help group, or wait, no, didn't they kick you out on the first day for sneaking in something?
I have no idea what you're talking about. However, I did meet him, as most good stories involve. Boo! Pouring whiskey.
Pouring drinks, or were you pouring drinks?
Yes.
Probably both, yeah. Oh, that is right. Because I think you were pouring drinks and you said, hey, loudmouth, I got to do something. I'll be back in a minute. Watch the bar. And you left for like 4 hours.
No, not me. Not me. Not me. That must have been Mel.
No. Because I met you first. This is back at the bar that was by the pool. I remember that.
I worked the bar by the pool.
I'm not really sure I did either, but I poured a lot of drinks behind the bar.
Well, that's not surprising. What's more amazing is you let other people drink the drinks.
Sure, I didn't really. All right, Doc. It's time to see if he gets the stick.
Dune, The Last Starfighter, or Starman? Which is your religion?
Last Starfighter. Hey, not even a question. Starman? That's a girl.
Starman.
Starman. You went Starman over Last Starfighter?
Starman. He's not very good at the numbers.
Oh, Last Starfighter. You talk about a movie that is begging for a remake. Not
so I just go to
re-CGI that shit and relaunch it.
Hollywood these days would ruin it, one. And two, I just go into the little Google Bing boxes and I type in sci-fi and fantasy movies, and between the two, I see what pops up, and I randomly pick one so we're not uniform every time asking people the same questions. I just want to mix it up a little bit. And since The Last Starfighter was listed as a 1980s sci-fi movie, I picked the other two from the same category.
Yeah, you know, Doug's old enough. You might have taken a woman on a date for that.
Oh, Last Starfighter? I could have, yeah. Could have thrown the hottie on the back of the motorcycle back then in the day.
Went right out to that drive-in movie theater, ordered him some of that popcorn.
No, we didn't have a drive-in because this is in the tropics. Hot as shit there, if you haven't heard that. People don't like to hang out outside unless you're on the beach, so, or in the jungle, jumping over waterfalls and stuff, which I did as a kid, which was actually kind of cool. So
that explains the hair.
Nothing like going to high school in a country with no legal drinking age. I'm not shitting you. I went to college to dry out.
You clearly
I know you. So, Beastmaster, Conan the Destroyer, or Willow?
Ooh, that's a mood centric. My gut instinct says during the day it was Conan the Destroyer, but you know, because that was back in the day, right? But I also like Willow. But you said nobody listened, right? Generally said, but they are remaking Willow, so we'll see in there. But Conan the Destroyer,
when they're remaking things.
So Last Starfighter, they could take it forward in time because there's nothing to say. Like he got older, he's now the general, right? You could take it forward the next invasion and bring the concept forward.
They did that with Gossip Girl on HBO.
You could do the same thing with Willow. The little girl grows up. Because I don't know if some of those actors are alive. And if they just redo it and just put new characters in, they're going to change things that don't make sense just so they can say they did something. I don't mind them coming back to properties, but I'd rather they do it in a way that pushes the story forward.
I had heard they were trying to bring back a bunch of the principal characters, so I think it's going to be an aged thing.
That would be awesome. Okay.
Like they could do like Firefly, where they pull him out of like retirement from a geriatric hospital, and you know, there's ways you
do that with Firefly.
No, but they've talked about another Firefly too.
No.
So they're going to pull out a geriatric, diminutive in stature, or whatever the term is, actor, and stab him through the chest with something.
That could work. I mean, you just got to bring the old characters in. It worked for Star Wars, right? I mean, Harrison Ford, he had to die. Am I right?
There's other Star Wars characters stabbed through the chest with large.
It worked for Star Wars.
You didn't hear my sarcasm?
Okay. So, moving on, because JR obviously is very confused tonight. As you know, we love the scientific and the fantastical fantasies, but which was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy?
Sci-fi. Piers Anthony, Herbert.
Yeah, but
David Drake.
Dune is kind of like space fantasy. It's a little bit of both.
Well, like, oddly enough, as a kid, and if you've ever read it now, this would horrify you. Bio of a Space Tyrant. I read every one of those books cover to cover. And thinking back of the content of those books of Bio of the Space Tyrant, that's probably not the best thing for a 12-year-old to be reading. So, but no, then I got into Hammer Slammers and stuff like that. And a lot of the military sci-fi really, really took hold in those years. Back when we were playing the original, second edition D&D, which was
the guy
before it became commercial.
Yeah, whatever.
My kids play D&D now, which I find absolutely fascinating.
Which version?
My college kids.
Which version are you playing?
Oh, I don't know. They're playing it on. They really got into it during the pandemic and all that with all their old college buddies and stuff. So I'm not sure how they're doing or which edition they're on anymore. I'm just not paying for it, so I'm okay with that.
Fair enough.
It's probably 5th edition because that's what people seem to be doing these days. So
yeah, we won't get into that war. We could have an edition war episode because it is in the realm of what we cover for the podcast, but it won't be today.
It will not be today because, for one, you're going to be wrong.
Whoa,
So,
youngin'.
What is your first memory of engaging in speculative fiction as a genre? Was it watching it, reading, playing a game, trying to pick up a girl knowing you?
Probably pretty likely. Now, the problem is when you ask me what was my first memory of anything, I must go back to my original point that I grew up in a country with no legal drinking age. So my first memory of speculative fiction is denying that the pint of rum that fell out of my school bag on the bus belonged to me. And then the entire story that was generated outside of that was utterly amazing, I think. Vaguely recall, maybe a little bit, sort of. But somewhere in there.
For a friend. Were you holding it for a friend?
Oh, no way, man. I'm not going to throw my bros under the bus like that.
That was my excuse.
Under the bus. Mom put it in there. I don't know.
My excuse was always I was holding the cigarettes for a friend, but I would never name what friend it is because everybody knew they were mine.
That's the only time I actually ended up getting suspended in high school was for smoking on the school bus.
Why smoke on this?
Oh, wait, well, I gotta ask.
So it was probably not the same school bus that you guys had. Ours didn't have windows; they just had like wire mesh things because there was no air conditioning inside of there. And it's like 90% humidity and 95 degrees all day. It's a jungle, right? It's a fucking jungle, right? It's hot, like Vietnam hot, right? Because literally it's just east of Vietnam. So yeah, I was smoking. Everybody smoked on a school bus. Bus driver was pissed off. He called me out on it. So, and it was true. Then I bought a motorcycle and then just drove that to school for the next couple of years. So, okay. I don't know where that story was going, but
I don't know where that story was going either.
So, were you one of the go to war or go to jail enlistments? Is that how that works?
My dad was a go to war or go to jail enlistment. So, my dad was a ward of the state of the city of Detroit. And he was in front of the Wayne County judge. This was back in the late, probably mid 60s at the time. So he was a greaser. You know, he graduated high school. He's a ward of the state. Get out, right? So him and his running buddies were drag racing one time too many. And the judge said him and his buddies had 2 doors to go through that day. One of which was Mr. Bailiff to the county jail for whatever the hell he decided to charge him with. Or the other one was to a recruiter of their choice, which was right across the street. So the bailiff literally walked them across the street because the judge says, you will be out of my town within the next 48 hours. And they said, Navy. I don't like boats. We're from Detroit. What do we know about boats? Nothing. They said Air Force. No. Then they said Army. This Vietnam shit's kicking up. Don't want to do that. Marines. Hell, a judge just sent us here because we can't follow instructions. Sure as shit ain't doing the Marines. They joined the Air Force. And they said, we're going to screw with the judge. And he said, we're going to become cops because that'll really get his goat. So they walk in, and Air Force recruiters aren't stupid when they see the bailiff walking in, the new recruit. And they say, we want to be cops. The bailiff says, well, we have 2 types of law enforcement in the Air Force. One is cops, law enforcement. They just sit in cars. It's boring as shit. They don't do anything else. The other one is called security police. They're like the Air Force ninjas. They're like SWAT guys. And they said, we're going to do that shit. And then fast forward about 2 years, him and his buddy, because they did the joint enlistment thing, are standing in front of matching concrete 50-foot diameter slabs in the snowy plains of Utah, which were the tops of the Minuteman missiles, staring at each other with binoculars, saying this was a bad decision. Where they made their second bad decision, which was, we're going to tell our reenlistment officer we're staying in, but we have to go somewhere warm. Welcome to Saigon, 1968, 2 weeks before the Tet Offensive kicked off. Oops. That was a dumbass move.
It builds character, though. That's what they tell me.
It did. But you know what? He was put in front of the judge, had to join a service. You know, it was service or prison. He did 27 years and ended up retiring as an OSI division chief of Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines, the largest Air Force base they had. So the judge made a good call. Me, I joined the Army.
I blame the judge.
When I joined the Army, my dad swore, because I was actually born when my dad was at OCS at McCord Air Force Base, right across from Fort Lewis. At the time, McCord did not have a hospital. So I was actually born on Fort Lewis. And when I joined the Army, my dad says, I knew them fucking Army doctors dropped you on your head.
I like your dad.
They are kind of klutzy.
Yeah.
So I had an Army doctor who I'm 9 months pregnant. Look at me and go, how did that happen?
Well, when a boy really likes a girl.
And I looked at him and I went, sir, I'm going to pretend you didn't ask that question.
I want an OB from the Air Force, please.
But yeah, no.
All right.
Anyways, back to the game tonight. You didn't really answer it. Oh yeah, you did. So what is it that you love though about speculative fiction?
What do I love about speculative fiction? In the form of a 4-part multi-choice question.
Sure, go for it.
This is not war college. You do not need to write an essay, damn it.
I would really have to say, to be perfectly honest, it's anything where you can take some basis of reality that people understand and you can twist it, make it comfortable with them. You know, sometimes when you read fiction, and if I've got to go through the first 3 chapters and go back to the first chapter because I don't have a basis of understanding that I can relate to, that's a problem. What I like about speculative fiction, even alternate history, anything like that, if you have a hook that I can associate myself or how I would react in those situations and see it develop, then that's going to draw me in more. You know, so and that's okay. When we're talking about like science fiction, when science fiction spends 70% of the book explaining the science and not the story, that kind of loses me inside of there. So
you weren't into The Expanse then, were you?
I like The Expanse because The Expanse has characters that you can relate to. They have situations that you can relate to. I cannot relate to somebody who's sitting in a metal cigar in space who launches a missile in a battle, and that missile is going to hit 72 hours later, and they're all having meals and taking naps and shit like that as they're waiting, you know, and there's 17 chapters of physics written in the book, which is probably more realistic than most science fiction out of there, but it doesn't draw me in. I can't relate to that. I don't want to be a submariner either. I can't relate to that shit.
No. So.
Okay, no offense to the subs who are going to be sending us hate mail. And if you want to send us a hate mail, it's at Cisca at blastersblazepodcast.com.
Bless their hearts there, Tubi dudes under the sea. You're doing a great job. Not something I'm doing.
So I actually didn't go to the War College, but I did go to the Dalai Lama School of Infantry, so I know the important rules. 2 in the chest, face gets the rest.
There you go. War College teaches you've got to really truly understand what's going on in your heart, you know, and watch out for extremists too. You know,
so not the bad. My heart was actually, fun fact, my heart was surgically removed at the NCO Academy, so it's not a problem. So how did your love of speculative fiction, the genre, transition into you writing these stories on airplanes?
Okay, so what originally had happened is, this is kind of back when I had met Cisca. I met a lot of authors through conventions, and I had never been to a convention, science fiction, fantasy, any type of con. Just didn't have them. I didn't grow up in the States. So I had a buddy who was coming up, Shane Grease, who you interviewed before, and he said, "Hey, Doug, let's go to this convention." I'm like, "What the hell would I want to do there?" And he's like, "Well, it's a bunch of people. You're a geek." That was Raven Con back when it was in like Western Virginia. And he said, "But bring a lot of guns." And And I says, okay. So I rolled out, and the first day I went out there, I didn't know any of these people. These guys bust out like cast iron mortars and all other types of goofy shit. And I'm laying out like 845s on the deck, and I probably bought about 2,000 rounds of ammunition. And we're all just out there John wooing, you know, double two fists and just shooting this shit up. So after that range day, I says, well, this is the convention. It's like, no, this isn't the convention. This is us just meeting before the convention. So we went to the hotel, and I'm sitting, and we're walking into the bar, and Shane sees a couple of guys sitting at the table and says, hey, let's go sit over here and talk to these guys. I know them. And I said, all right, Shane. So I sit down, and the guys, you know, starts talking, all ex-military guys. You know, we kind of find each other in any crowd, right? So we're all talking about stupid shit. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? I think I had not been to, this was pre-Iraq, so I had just gotten back from Bosnia. I think it was like 2 years ago. So we're just talking about generic shit. And then Shane tells me, and I'm not going to mention this author's name because I said something really mean to him. He says, hey, did you read that book that I gave you? And I says, yeah. And then the guys sitting next to him, the older guy, his ears perk up, and he goes, well, what'd you think about it? I says, well, that was pretty good. This part kind of sucked. This character was dumb. I really like this section. It's like, but it needed this, that, and the other. He's like, oh, really? I wrote that book. And I'm like, oh, really? You should have fixed that shit. But years roll by, and I had a really, really good time. That was Jody and Christine's wedding back then. So I was actually in their wedding party. Didn't even know them. I'm like, what? How can I be in it? But I have my dress uniform. So how can I be in a wedding? I don't even know these people, right? But I kind of got hooked. So a lot of the other military writers, we'd sit at conventions, and we'd sit by the pool and have a couple drinks and a couple drinks more, and we'd tell stories. And I started doing a lot of beta reading with them, and then give my input. And finally, I said, hey, you need to just start going and writing your own books. And that's where I started bouncing stories off. I met Mel Todd, who is my co-author in the series here, because I had never written a book. I had a lot of good ideas, and I can bullshit with the best of them for hours on end. I could tell you a book, you know, just sitting by the pool, but I had never written one. So Mel has a well of patience, and she brought me along, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And then I realized I was running. I'm a program manager for IT programs for the Department of Defense. And I used to fly from Baltimore to San Diego about twice a month, 6 hours there and 6 hours back. And I just decided, let's write the books. And I would sit and type for 6 hours straight there. I type at the hotels in between drinks and stuff like that. You know, you got to socialize with the crew. And then 6 hours back, and I think I wrote most of Blood War Rage, flying back and forth to San Diego. Blood War Fight, I actually wrote sitting at the little tiki hut bar that was at the base of my hotel in San Diego, staring out at the water, just getting monkey hammered on IPAs. So most of Blood War Fight was brought to you by Pale Ales at the Surf Tiki Bar or whatever in San Diego, California. So they actually have my bookmarks and stuff. They have me sign them, and they're like up above the cash register and stuff like that. So.
Pale ales. All right, we got to kick this guy from the show.
I like IPA. Shut the hell up.
But you know what? I got so burned out because, like in San Diego, that's like 80% of the beer selection. I actually got kind of burned out on IPAs. So I've gone back to Yuengling is now my beer now. I really like the lagers sort of thing. And I got to tell you, the older I got, the worse the hangovers got from IPAs.
I don't know. I'm convinced that IPAs are just hipster drinks that they don't even like themselves, but they drink so they can tell themselves they're special.
Oh, I can't take like.
I like IPAs, and I'm not a hipster.
Are you though? Are you? I don't know. All right, so
I don't wear my pants that tight.
Now that I think about it, you put Cisca in a pair of UGG boots, and
I don't own any.
I could see it though.
Yeah,
you only ever seen me at cons wearing corsets and heels.
All right, Doc Martens and corsets, gotcha.
Oh, so she's a fancy hipster.
Fancy hipster.
All right, so
I wear Kenneth Cole boots or Michael Kors. If you're going to sit there and malign my footwear, get it right.
Understood. So many authors left. many authors let their own real life experiences influence the stories they tell. So were there any specific formidable moments that shaped you as a storyteller?
Yes, actually, there were. It's probably true with a lot of military folks. So, one of which is I find dialogue that I'm writing in conversations become very familiar, and it's not just tone and tenor. You know, soldiers, sailors, airmen, marine, they all have a way of talking to each other, and you know the gallows humor sort of stuff, so that creeps in. I will say the most emotionally driving events were not from hot combat zones or anything else like that. When we were in Bosnia, we were pulling, we had to pull security for the UN organization that was doing the body exhuming in Srebrenica out of the soccer fields. And it took me a long time to realize how affecting that was, seeing the aftermath of essentially just mass slaughter, you know, little body bags folded in half and stuff being loaded in trucks. That actually came out in a scene in Blood War Fight. The reaction at a certain time, Blood War Fight is actually the prequel to Blood War Rage. And Blood War Rage, when I first wrote it as a military guy, I did not want to write war books. I didn't want to write a war story. So I started off the series intentionally after the war, following the veteran and them dealing with what they did in the wars, how the wars affected them, and how it affected their relationship. And the main character, who by common diagnosis is basically suffering from massive PTSD, addictions, and things like that. And you never really knew what got him there because the war itself was a prologue. It was only about 12 pages long because I didn't want to write a war book. But the reactions to the character and the fan responses really kind of drove into the we want to know the story of the war. So when I went back and started writing Blood War Fight and putting in the scenes inside of there, that's where different aspects of things that I had seen in my military career and different events that had happened really started creeping into the story. And one of the key driver events, which recurs in different images and thoughts and scenes throughout the rest of the series, was where Declan Kinner, who is the commander of the special unit that basically has to make the hard decisions, essentially bombards, has to destroy a town in Ohio that's full of demons, but it's also full of humans, and he knows this. So he massacres essentially an entire city population to prevent the demons from breaking out where it is. So that really went back to earlier memories of Bosnia and Srebrenica and really the atrocities of war and how everybody justifies it. Slobodan Milosevic, still to this day, in every trial they brought him up to, was self-justifying his actions. So that was really kind of me looking at dealing how is man's inhumanity, a man on a battlefield, sometimes self-justified, and do the ends justify the means? And that image actually recurs in Betray in a long series of scenes where he's addressing what is causing these internal turmoils that he had. And they're all based on not, they're expanded, they're blown up, they're made super realistic, they're way more than anything I had experienced, but it's a driver to help kind of address the exposure of events to correlating events in the future and then how people respond to it. So that's how I kind of tie it.
Okay. Sounds good. Just random question. So what year was it that you did that RavenCon? Was it when they were in Richmond, when they went to Williamsburg, or back to Richmond?
It was south. It was south of west of Richmond, somewhere west of Richmond, Roanoke. Oh. It was in Roanoke, Virginia.
So I didn't know it went there too. Okay.
That was was I a major already? I think so. Cisca's like, I don't know. How the hell am I supposed to know that?
I don't know. Rocks were still soft.
Yeah, I think I was a baby major back then.
Okay, fair enough. It's just interesting. That's one of the 3 places I've been in public like that, and it was even too much. And I was like, "That's a small." Cisca's like, "That's a small con." I'm like, "What are you talking about? There was at least a dozen people there."
Such a baby.
Anyway, all right. So back on track. So we asked this question to all of our military veterans. You were retired Army, so we asked this question. But how do you feel like your time in the big green weenie affects the stories you tell?
it really does, because I would say, and I'm not talking racial, ethnic, or anything, the diversity of the personalities of the characters in my book are very apparent. I don't think you would be able to find 2 that were really the same. And I really think that's because spending, the 20 plus years prior to that in military units, most people don't realize how diverse, not only racial, ethnic, religion stuff in the military, just personalities. You got guys from the South, you got guys from the Midwest, you got guys from the Northwest, you got California guys, you got New York folks, and they're all in the same squad. You're all in the same platoon. You're all in the same company. And everybody was so different. You had a common goal, and the military does kind of round you off into certain perspectives on how you respond to sort of things, but everybody's personalities were so different. It was not, there was no, everybody in the platoon is Fast Times from Ridgemont High. Everybody else in the platoon, this is the Brooklyn platoon. In your active duty units, everybody is so diverse. And it just makes for some batshit crazy conversations. And I really think that's why I love writing dialogue in my books. And that is some of the best things, because military folks generally, counter to what most people think, we're a little self-deprecating. We love to throw shit on each other. It's kind of like never lay your hands on a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, though, the old Charlie Daniels song. It's like we'll give each other shit. We'll even give Navy and Marines guys, shit. But don't mess with any other one, but you're not allowed to give it shit. Don't give Bob shit. I'm giving Bob shit because Bob deserves to get my shit, and he gives me shit back, and it's okay. So I really think the military has influenced my dialogue and how I ensure everybody's personality is clear and distinct. If I have 2 characters that are the same, one of them is getting chewed up by some form of mutated demonic creature within like 30 seconds, because I don't need that.
Fair enough. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but when you write these characters, do you draw on people you knew personally, or just more conglomerations of people you knew?
Some of them are horribly distinct persons to the point where their name is misspelled by 1 letter, and characteristics, traits, and personalities are exactly the same. I will say in my books, when you're dealing more with the secondary characters that are recurring but aren't prime characters, I would say those generally are amalgamations of people. You'll get that. I have politicians in mind. I have bureaucrats. Every one of the bureaucrats in my book is generally an amalgamation of 2 or 3 other bureaucrats. If they're jackass bureaucrats in my book, they're an amalgamation of 2 or 3 of my previous bosses. So,
okay.
But my best characters, though, are honestly, I generally tend to mold my best characters off of people that I know. And they know that I do this, and they're fully aware that I do it. And generally, I make sure that they're beta readers for these books. You've interviewed one of the characters that is a principal character. Shane. His name is Shane Grice, not Shane Grease, as you may know. He's actually a principal character in the book, and I gotta say it's pretty damn close. Not enough to sue them. Not nearly enough to sue.
Oh no, Shane would love that. Shane loves that character.
So we've talked about how it affects the story. Your time in the Army affects the stories you tell as an author, but how does it affect the way you engage with content as a reader or consumer? Because obviously movies and books and all of the things.
It's actually changed. Since I retired, I don't think I have watched a war movie based on anything later than World War II since I retired from the Army. It's literally kind of changed the dynamic. It's made me almost want to, we talk about speculative fiction or even military sci-fi. If I'm reading a military book, discounting the war college I spent in last year, because I had that was plenty of those, but I really don't want to read about other people's interpretation of what would have been around my own military experiences. I know that sounds a little odd, but I've never watched an Iraq war movie. I think the last Afghanistan war movie I was the Beast or the Tank, about the Russian tank crew, from the 80s. It has changed what I want to read when it comes to anything related to the military. I want it to be extremely different. I don't want it to be related to current experiences. And some of that's avoidance. I know that all the military people have that. There are certain areas that you want to avoid. I don't want to get into the current military stuff so much. I don't want to write about my own personal life as my life. I'd rather make it extreme and make all demons. Demons are easier to kill.
Fair enough. Doc, next one's on you. You get to ask your favorite questions.
Okay. The fan stuff. So have you had any cool cosplays or fan arts of any of your characters yet?
No, I'm very disappointed in that. Although I had one guy say he was going to do it. I didn't see him do it. Johnny Boulder, who is one of the characters inside of there, who is basically the muscle for one of the bad guys in Blood War, Rage, and Betray. He was gonna cosplay him. I didn't see him do it. I was a little disappointed, but at the same time, I was wearing my own really wicked Fallout cosplay of a wasteland mailman that just stole the show. So that was okay. I made up.
Are you sure?
The best one.
So when do you write in a wasteland mailman into your series so you can say you cosplayed a character from your book?
Somebody's got to.
Let's see. A wasteland mailman. Okay, so there is a sequel. There is a sequel in the Demon universe. From once I finished Blood War Alliance, there's 3 spin out solo sequels inside of there. One of which is in the Demon universe. So in theory, I could have the character pull some chump along with him, some human chump, and make him become the mailman in Demon Land. So that could be pretty interesting. Customer service is superior, though, when your customer can eviscerate you with a claw.
That could make things complicated.
Yeah, it could. Service with a smile in that regard.
Well, would service guarantee demonship?
No, they're pretty racist, to be perfectly honest. I hate to see it, but demons like demons. So
how rude.
And I can't tell you how the main character survives in the demon world, because that would be a spoiler. It'll be exposed right at the end of Alliances, which is being written right now. The very last scene will lay that out. So here's
see, this is the Doug I know. I'm going to tease you and give you just the tip and nothing else.
The epilogue is
choice of words.
First scene of the Demon Universe book.
So, have you spotted anybody reading your books, like out in the wild, anywhere?
Not at the bus stop. Not in the serious. I have at conventions. Not that I live by Baltimore.
Did they know you were at the convention?
What's that?
Did they know you were?
I don't. Well, probably. They probably did, because they were probably stalking me. Just really wanted me to. Really wanted to see me, so they were like, "Hold on." They wanted to see you. How they that's why I got to carry Sharpie markers around, sign the books.
Yeah, but did anybody actually ask for your signature?
Yes.
Doug, I was just getting you to pay the bar tab. That was all I was doing. That doesn't count. Different signature.
No. On my actual, they bought the books too. They bought the book. And then that is this. Well, in the last convention, I actually got punched by a fan because I made her cry. She found me at my table, walked around my table, and punched me because I made her cry.
Aww.
But that was his wife.
Lots of women cry.
It was it. I have a
Your pickup lines are horrible.
Wonderful scene, which is the last scene of Blood War Fight, which is the first prequel book. That it's a tearjerker, and she punched me.
You sure that's not just because your pickup line was that bad?
That could have been it too, but she said it was because of the scene in the book, and I made her cry. And I'm sticking with it because I'm pretty sure she put it on Facebook that I made her cry too. So that was a monumental occasion for me.
Doug makes women cry. Okay.
I've been making women cry for decades. But as an author, that was the first time I had somebody say I made him cry and punch me.
So. Which
I would not recommend. Hey, dear listeners, people don't like to be walked up to and punched. So
no.
Even if you are like a 110-pound woman, it's still, it hurts.
You're a delicate little flower.
I am a delicate flower, not quite as little as I used to be, but
So what is the weirdest?
There's delicacy in my soul, not like delicious. Please don't try to eat my soul like some craven stalker.
So what would be your funniest or weirdest fan interaction?
Besides being punched by a woman who said I made her cry? Let's see.
Most women want to punch men who make them cry, just for the record.
My weirdest fan interaction. Can I be the fan in this one?
Sure.
I'm a big zombie guy. I don't write about zombies. Don't write about zombies. I was asked to write a zombie book. I didn't want to write a zombie book, but I was at a Walking Dead convention in Philadelphia. So I'm staying at the hotel right across from the convention, and I'm drinking beers, and I'm talking to all the guys from the convention are staying at the hotel. And, when you're an ex-military guy, people have stories, and, and I wasn't fanning over, and we were just drinking beer, but conversations go up, and we start talking and things like that. So, and I was still in the Army at the time. I was in the Army. And so we're talking and having a good time. And I look up at the TV, and Wonder Woman is playing on the TV above the bar. Linda Carter, Wonder Woman. Gal Gadot, good job. Linda Carter's still the Wonder Woman in my heart. So I'm looking up there, glancing, and I hear a voice behind me. So I'm surrounded by, it was a cast of Breaking Bad and The Walking Dead, half of which went to The Expanse, but that's a whole nother story, and I won't tell you about what I did with those guys later in the night. But I'm looking at the TV, watching, and I hear this voice behind me, and he says, "Holy shit, are we really watching Linda Carter?" And I rounded on this poor guy. I spun around in my seat, and I poked my finger at the chest of this diminutive-looking little Asian man. And I say, "You ever criticize Linda Carter in my presence again, I'm going to beat your ass." I was a little drinking, and everyone else was laughing too, and everyone who was with me, because they knew I would never assault anybody or anything like that. And it was said in a humorous Army way, Now, the funny point is, he's standing next to like this 6-foot-tall Caucasian guy who's just laughing his ass off. And he's pointing at the little Asian man saying, "He's going to beat your ass over Wonder Woman." And this guy just starts pleading in this weird voice. He's looking at me like, "Hey, man, I meant no offense. I own a comic book store." I'm like, "I don't give a shit if you own a 7-Eleven. You don't disrespect Linda Carter." Turns out, have you ever seen this show, Comic Book Men, or whatever the hell it's called? A couple of guys that own a comic book store. Apparently people watch this sort of thing, and it's a big story. So apparently I'm a fan of Linda Carter threatening to assault, as some type of weird, not a fan, the two actors in a reality TV show about comic book store owners because he's disrespecting Wonder Woman, which was so hilarious to the entire cast of The Walking Dead. I got pulled into their van and ended up pub crawling through Philadelphia for the rest of the night with the entire cast of The Walking Dead as part of their entourage. So that was a pretty weird fan night, I gotta say.
Good to know. We will keep them sober in the future, and they have 12-step meetings for that. And we will keep along. Doc.
Meetings sound way too much organized.
Yeah, and you're not a quitter.
And there's actually photographic evidence of this too, by the way.
He's a retirer, though. That's kind of like quitting.
I'm a retired. Hey, I retired from the Army because they started drilling holes in my spine. And I said, you know what? When the entire idea of putting on my ballistic armor, my helmet, and getting into an armored vehicle and driving anywhere with bumps in the road makes my back hurt, I'm like, I'm done.
Dude, anywhere you go in one of those things has bumps in the roads, even if it's completely smooth.
Yeah. So I decided, drilling holes in my spine I was over 20 years in at the time. I said, you know what? I think I'm going to check out this retirement gig. How about you just pay me money for not doing it anymore?
So, can you give us the highlight reel of everything that is published works of Doug? I don't want to know any of the weird shit you've done. I already know way too much of your weird shit.
Okay, so the published works of Doug, I Principles of Blood War series. I got Blood War Fight, Blood War Power, Blood War Rage, Blood War Betray. You kind of see a theme here on the titling. And I'm currently working on Blood War Alliance, which is the next bookend for the series. There's 3 spin-out books after that. I'm in JR's Storming Area 51 anthology as well, which I learned was the best way to get me to write an anthology is tell me, here's the basic theme of the story. I need it in 2 weeks.
Aren't I nice like
that? And 2 weeks later, I had the story go in there. So,
you loved it.
That's a good mover. I needed that.
I only hosted that anthology because Cisca keeps saying this would be really, really funny.
No, because I told them, I bet you won't do it. I dare you.
It's all her fault. That's the only anthology and only thing I've ever published that didn't at least earn out. It's all her fault.
But it's also like this.
You could kill somebody legitimately if you beat them with
size can matter.
You could beat a horse with that book. Great. Now the ASPCA and PETA and everybody else is going to be mad, but it's not my podcast.
Size can matter.
But so yeah, those who size doesn't matter. They're lying.
I'm small. I know.
Size doesn't matter. That's why us average size guys have lots of toys.
All right, and on that happy note, we're going to move on before we go NSFW. And so while all of that writing sounds fascinating, especially the Area 51 stuff, we're going to talk, calm, deep breaths. You can do that stuff after the show. Today we're going to talk about Blood War Rage, which is the first book in the Blood War series that you co-wrote with friend of the show, Mel Todd. So where did you get the premise for this universe? How did you come up with the idea for the series? Was it psychedelics, Ouija board,
whiskey,
hanging out with Doc too much? I hear that's bad for your health.
It had actually come from a lot of stories. I do a lot of poolside conversations with other authors, like I had mentioned before, and was doing a lot of beta reading. And I was always fascinated by the concept of demonic wars. And, I always loved Constantine and all in that. And I like the idea of other realms that are fully developed realms. They could be angel realms, demon realms, that weren't just focused on you as humans, but what would happen if they clash. So I'd started thinking about a demonic war between humans and demons and how you would fight it. I was really approaching it from a military aspect inside of there. What would our weapons do to them? What would happen if you had some constraints? And instead of, the humans would just machine gun down any clawed creatures coming in there. It says, well, let's throw magic into the mix. And the magic actually became the most difficult part. So I started bouncing these ideas across, and I ran the idea across Mel of what if we wrote a book that took place after the war, and we started talking about the after effects. So magic is newly introduced to the human world. How would magic change a social dynamic? How would magic change military tactics? It kind of fell more on my end. And we went down a bunch of rabbit holes inside of there, and we really got focused on the magic, and we started going into blood magic. And well, if you had A positive or you were AB negative, or you were, oh, how would that affect magic? All of that kind of got lost in the wash in the book because it got too cumbersome for the story itself. And I wanted the story to be freewheeling. I wanted it to be about the characters. I wanted it to be about their development inside of there. So really, it was a series of conversations about a good idea that culminated with several of my friends and other authors just saying, all right, why don't you just shut the hell up and just write the damn book? And that's when I admitted, but I don't know how to write a book. And they said, well, there's books about writing books. I'm like, I don't want to read books about writing books so I can write a book. And then that's when Mel kind of stepped in and says, well, here, write this short stuff and then we'll work on it. And the first book took not only a little more time. The first book probably took a year to write because it was not only learning how to style and learning the voice of what I wanted to pick, but also learning how to write with a co-author, which is a trick in itself. I mean, you can do an entire podcast about, learning to write as a team and how you separate the work and how you keep the story combined and functional and flowing and have the same point of view inside of there without people going, oh, well, I can pick which section you wrote and which section she wrote inside of there. So.
Okay. That was a well thought out and well rehearsed answer. I approve. So before we dig into this wonderful story, we've BS'd for almost an hour and we haven't even got your story yet, but let's take a minute and we're going to talk about this sexy
dealing with Doug
book cover. So can you tell us the origin story for this fantastic piece of art?
Well, so I was looking at different images, and I will say the book art is interesting because you can have a whole nother podcast on that. So I was a brand new, untested commodity for the writing inside. So we did not get a $5,000 an hour artist to create it. But I did have the vision. I wanted to show inside of there an apocalyptic wasteland, but I didn't want it to be the sole focus. There's portals inside of there, and I don't want to go too much into giving away a lot of the book, but they're not easy. It's not something that can be done often, but it is what allows demons and humans to interact across these realms, with always violent conclusions whenever any of this occurs. But the solo, you see an image in there of just the silhouette of a single soldier basically addressing in his ravaged town that he's in that's been destroyed. That image inside of itself where he's pointing into the other realm is essentially the survivor, Declan Kenner, which is the lead in Rage. He's one of the few people that actually survived this apocalyptic war with the demons from the military side. Essentially 90+% of all the combat power and militaries across the globe are destroyed, and what essentially becomes almost World War I level apocalyptic devastation. And he was one of the last guys on the line. So I wanted to show a solo picture, solo figure, basically the last guardian, and he survived at the very end as one of the last guardians of the last battle at the last portal. So I wanted to show that inside of there. And the image at the bottom where you see the little crest with the Alpha and the Omega inside of there, that actually leads in, and there's believe it or not, that's actually an Easter egg for essentially the end of the book inside of there. But that crest and that patch in there is what's adapted and adopted by the demon hunting units at the war, which is the specialized fighters of the Blood War itself. So that Alpha and Omega patch inside of there with the blood red. In the blood red and Blood War is the terminology used because when the demons come through, they're basically harvesting all the blood, which is part of their magic and part of their energy that it brings through. So they bring with them apocalyptic, steampunk almost, if you want to visualize machinery, demon machinery that comes through, and it sucks the blood horizontally across the battlefield in a giant reserve tanks that they take away. So as soldiers are fighting this battle, it's literally raining blood sideways across the battlefield as it's being drawn towards these repositories. as the demons are massacring everybody. So that's why blood is the color red is the imagery inside of there.
All right, Doc. Next one is on you. Wake up. Stop knitting.
I'm not knitting. So what would be your 30-second elevator pitch for the book? Can you do it in 30 seconds?
Can I do anything in 30 seconds?
No.
I probably could do something in 30 seconds. But, okay, 30-second elevator pitch. All's Declan Kenner wanted to do was live out the remainder of his life and forget about the devastating horrors of fighting the demon war all alone in his cabin, drink himself to death, and maybe watch a little football. Unfortunately, the government had other plans. They had to hide the fact that the demons are coming back and they need people that knew how to fight them, and he was going to do it no matter what. That's under 30, right?
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Yep.
So what is
led
it
to the most famous scene that everybody liked when he had to put on his body armor after being sitting in the woods drinking beer for like the last 5 years as a retired Army guy. There's a little self-reflection in that. He puts on his body armor. It doesn't fit. So he's claiming the Velcro shrunk. So there's a couple funny
images. Happen. True story.
Yeah, it is such a true story. The entire scene happened in my own basement when I tried to put on my old body armor. And it's like, damn, Velcro shrunk.
Yeah, and my boots weigh 20 pounds. Got it.
I'm just saying they made maternity uniform for me.
We're not going to talk about the maternity uniform. I hate that thing. Looks like it was made by Omar the tent maker. Okay.
I feel attacked.
I've never tried it
no.
on, so I don't know. It might be form-fitting for me.
7 months pregnant and have a soldier look at you and go, "Oh, are those the ACUs for when we've gained a few pounds? I need to get one of those." No, I'm pregnant. Lose the weight. No. I've never seen an E7 move so fast when she came over and goes, "Small, come here," before you eat one of them.
Maybe that's why you're wearing uniform. I'm just saying.
Hey, she just called me fat.
Well,
I was 7 months pregnant. You're not fat when you're 7 months pregnant. You're 7 months pregnant. And angry.
I don't want to get into a gender argument. You know, I'm not one of those type of guys.
Bend over. You can become one of those kind of guys.
All right. So,
if you guys haven't noticed, I've known Doug for a while because I don't normally talk like that to people on the show.
You talk to everybody like this. You probably talk to your
show. Not on the show.
Oh, okay.
She doesn't want the video proof to get out in the event it can be used against her in court.
Doug likes me. He likes this. Okay. So, what tropes do you feel Blood War Rage hits best? Ugh.
What trope doesn't fit best?
Tropes. Yes, tropes. You know
what
those are, right?
Buddy comedy thrown in with I'm trying to think of the right one. If you mashed a buddy comedy with Jovanovic, what's her movies? Oh.
I don't know. You want to circle back to the question?
A buddy comedy with any like horror action movie.
Okay.
So basically, Bruce Campbell fighting demons with machine guns, friends with helicopters. Oh, and then betray an antique tank.
Okay.
Okay.
Stuart tank.
So what is it?
A lot of pride in writing that one.
So what is it you think makes your series special and unique in
especially you know the characters. You can identify with who the characters are, how they react to things. You know, if you poke me, do I bleed? Yes, they bleed, and they say, "Shit, that hurts. Why are you poking me?" You know, they're not superheroes. They're all flawed. They're all dealing with their own demons themselves. The demons. There's a couple characters in the book that are actual demons that you get to know a little bit. You get to know a lot in alliances. They all have personalities that you can pick somebody from, but in an absurd situation. I mean, do you see your mother-in-law as a demon? Probably not. Do you see your boss as a demon? Probably not. But do you see your buddy Larry as a demon? You probably do. So no matter what the roles are of the characters, are all believable. I have, several strong female characters in there, but they're not trope female characters, right? They're the same as the men. They have the same suffering and issues that are going inside of there, and the tropes that go through it and the buddy comedy pieces that go in there is what drives them through the universe itself. You get to see more of the universe as it expands inside, but what I really want people to do is relate to the characters and find a character that they can understand better. And that's why I have really 5 distinct character types inside of there, and they're all targeted towards what I believe your average person going through life and their trials and tribulation has something that they can relate to in each one.
Okay, so what genre or subgenres?
Guns and swords and magic and stuff like that too.
What about magical swords and magical guns?
Okay.
We don't go into those.
Okay, now there's a sword that may or may not be magical. You don't know yet. You'll know when Alliance comes out because I'm wrapping up a lot of scenes there. Magical guns, no. Magically enhanced weapon systems, yes. That's actually something that I did not talk about much in Rage or the prequels because it was the timing. Magic was new to the human world at the prequels, first time it ever showed up. Rage, it was new. Magic was being a little more commercialized. In Betray, magic becomes militarized. But Shane Gress, who's a character inside of there, he's a battle mage. So he was one of the first humans that they had trained to use magic offensively. But it was very localized. It was throw some fireballs, things like that. He matures his magic as magic and the culture matures. But I was always been fascinated about how you would use basic tenets of common type magic tropes and influence how weapon systems are designed and employed. How we would take what you would understand as current technology weapon systems, Gatling guns, rail guns, munitions. Could you add spells to bullets to make them more piercing, more destructive, better spalling effects, things like that. So, I do technology development for the DoD. So, part of the thing is, wouldn't it be easy if I had a magical component I could add to that could fix this big problem, that could make a 9mm just as powerful as a 50 caliber handgun, but still retain the ballistics characteristics and how much recoil it has as a 9mm, but still blow a big ass hole through something. So that actually comes out in Betray, where they start bringing in magic as way to enhance munitions, to enhance some weapons effectiveness, but without it becoming the silver bullet, the Superman trope inside of there, where if I have this one sword or this one bullet, I can destroy everything in the world. I put a little constraints inside of there that says it's an augment to modern technology and weapons. It's not a superseding capability. I could talk about this all day because that was actually, I really got into Betray on how to merge magic and modern weapons without becoming completely overrun by one or the other.
Okay, Doc, next question is you, since I stole yours after you stole mine.
So you've told us some about the main character, but do you want to tell us anything more about the main character?
I really want you to buy the book and read about the main characters.
Good answer. So why don't you tell us a bit about some of the secondary characters? You did touch on one of my absolute favorite characters.
Shane Grease is...
No, that's not Shane Grease.
Oh, not Shane. Let's see.
You know who?
Who? Donahue?
Oh, she has a sword.
Oh, yes. I do have a young sword wielding demon hunter apprentice who's essentially got a really bad attitude, but grateful intent. She's never worked as a team in Feather, and I'm gonna let you guys find her in the books. But essentially, her character was supposed to be a counterpoint almost to Declan's, self-destructive behavior because he had nothing to hold on to. He doesn't even have a dog, essentially, inside of there. So this character was something to humanize him, to bring him back. He becomes somewhat of a father figure. But what's interesting, because he is young enough and she is old enough, where we bring it up in the books that people think it's like, whoa, cradle robber. The guy likes to hang out. There's several scenes set in a VFW where people are just like hammering SF. If you've never been to a VFW where they have, dollar drafts running all night long. But so she is the daughter of another veteran killed in the war that Declan Kenner had fought with in a major battle in a town called Ypsilanti in Michigan, which ends up getting completely leveled and destroyed during the war. It also happens to be where I went to college, and I really didn't like the town. So when I was going around, I was trying to look for. I was actually going to do towns of relatives and things like that, and they all got kind of pissed off about that. So I blew up my college town, turned it into a big giant crater.
There is a certain town that I have told people I will buy them drinks if they destroy.
What town is this?
Modesto,
is it in California? Okay.
Modesto, California?
Yeah.
Wasn't that like wiped out in Black Tide Rising? No, that was Catalina.
Modesto and Sutter Creek.
Yeah.
I really will buy people drinks if they destroy those towns.
Don't they make crappy wine in Sutter's Creek?
Actually, it's pretty decent wine. It's just the people there.
I thought you would have actually liked Cordelia, who is essentially becomes Declan Kenner's boss.
I do like Cordelia. She's awesome.
And she's one of those hard, government enforcer, leads a secret office, basically is the cat herder of all these drunken malcontent, essentially borderline psychotic. Because one thing I didn't like
when I identify with Cordelia.
Yeah, so Cordelia has to herd all these guys into doing missions that they don't want to do. Because basically they're all dying because they're all poisoned. And that's what's called blood warp rage, is one of the effects of the blood exposure on the battlefield that gets mixed in demons and humans and then the magic. Essentially, they're all poisoned internally. And what it is, they have uncontrollable outbursts of rage, homicidal tendencies, things like that. So the few that had survived, a lot of them end up committing suicide, get killed by law enforcement because they go on psychotic rampages and things like that.
So
Government. What's that?
So Tuesday.
Yeah, it's a Tuesday, except for that they were out of tacos, so they had some issues. But the government comes up with a drug to suppress it. And basically, and this is very early in the first book, they get the demon hunters to hunt down demons that get found in the human world and attack them because they're the only ones really efficient at doing it by trading off a rage suppressing drug. So they get paid off basically in downers, a special formula the government's made. And one of the effects of rage is it does make them a little stronger in battle, a little faster in battle. It's almost like a berserker mode inside of there, except they're uncontrolled. They still be hurt. They're not superhuman. They don't turn into the Flash, but they get more focused on the battle and heightened senses. But the problem is they don't know when to stop. So that's where Cordelia comes in as their pusher and pimp, and she pimps them out on missions in exchange for drugs. Now that I think about this, I might have some issues here when I read that.
I mean, at least if you sell a few more books, you can afford a good psychiatrist.
I want a powerful, pretty attractive woman to give me drugs, so I go shoot people.
I mean, I can definitely relate to that.
Whatever
I might
works
need
for you.
therapy. might need some therapy here.
I mean, I'm not going to say that, but I'm not going to say it either.
I've seen it.
So, does your story have bad guys in it, or is it just the demons? Is it the other humans? Spoilers?
And well, there's a lead demon character that develops throughout the series of the books. So I did need to put a face to the enemy in that regard, because the demons are not unintelligent. There's levels of demons. You got everything from your grunt level Ciscas to your commanding Burbeys, inside of there in the demon hierarchy, and the more powerful and all that they are, the smarter they are. So there is a demon that you get familiar inside of there. He becomes much more prevalent in the second book and in the third book. The first two books, I had to go with the conniving, convoluted, conspiracy theorist, shadowy government behind the scenes puppet master. And he was, and his name is Ordonio in there. And he's, is he based off somebody? Yeah, he's based off somebody I used to work with in the Pentagon. And, but he is one of those evil bad guys that everybody just wants to work for. He's a smooth talker. He's got a great plan. He's super helpful, super polite, adjusts people's ties, never says a mean word to anybody as he's plotting genocide. So he was a horribly fun character to write. He does a speech in Blood War Betray, which is the second book before a major battle, where he's basically pumping up his troops to go into battle against these demon hordes that he's orchestrated this entire event. In this speech, it took me an entire flight from San Diego to Baltimore to write, because I'm trying to figure out, without selling my own soul, how would this guy do a Adolf Hitler level convincing speech that I had to believe when I wrote it, that other people would believe the bullshit he was selling and want to do it for him. So that was it. It took me 6 hours to write this one speech, but it's about a third of the way through Betray. You'll know it when you hit it. But that was a hard one to write, but it was a lot of fun, because you had to think, like, what would, if I was a very well socially adjusted psychopath, how would I convince normal people to turn into psychopaths?
Okay. That is a good, deep answer.
Join the army?
What's that?
That is one route. Get him to join the army. That level of evilness, they'll just make him a general. So
that's true.
Speaking
they
of
sent me to
characters,
war college as an army civilian. You'll figure that out. I didn't go as a colonel, but they sent me as a civilian. So, but I wrote it before that. Now I would feel guiltier, as not recognizing my sensitivity or whatever. So.
Good to know. So speaking of characters, you put yours through a lot of really bad things. So if you ever met him in a back alley and he realized you are Doug Burbey, the Doug Burbey, the guy that did this to him, how do you think that's going to play out?
In about half a second, he'd pull his gun and shoot me in the face.
Okay. Speaking of
yeah, and what's funny is he's the hero of the character, and I torture this poor bastard constantly. So not as bad as Mel Todd, though.
She's evil, though. So in all fairness,
I love Mel.
She's written an entire series called Twisted Luck. And all the lucks are, where basically this poor woman has no luck and just destroys this woman's life in every aspect of her life. I'm not that bad,
No, it's really worth it when you find out why it happens like that, and then it's like, wow.
Hey, at least my main characters, they get beer, they got buddies, they got guns, they do some, he's got an antique tank in his barn he rebuilds. So I'm throwing him some bones there.
Good of you to do that.
Sure, he has like psychotic visions and dreams and things like that. And he's got drunken angels that raid his liquor cabinet and threaten to kill him because he's going to destroy the universe and he doesn't know why. And then he ends up, having, astral projection conversations with demons and other realms that, you know, think he's a ghost of a dead warrior and shit like that. But hey, he gets beer out of it. And he's got a big screen TV too. I bring that up. He did get a big
He's
TV.
got a pretty good couch.
He does. All that shit gets blown up later, though.
Spoilers.
Because
All
you're a nice author, huh?
So
I'm going to give you something, and then I blow it up.
he remembers that old Army cadence. They give you $100 and they take back 99.
And take back 99.
So can you give us a sneak peek of how the sausage was made? Were there any cool scenes that got cut from this book that you liked and you might try to use later?
Yes, actually, there's a lot of in Cisco like this. Cordelia, who's his boss, has enough extra material that we're probably going to do a novella just on hers. We did a lot of background scenes on the government operations, the government agencies, ICERS, the international organization, which is the demon hunting spy force, basically, of government activities. We had a whole novella's worth of material that was based off of those characters that unfortunately ended up on the cutting room floor because the books are all rather large as it is inside of there. So I love writing backgrounds of characters and putting them in there. The problem is when they start slowing the pace of the book, they get left out. So Blood War Power is essentially all of Shane Grease's background story. About half of that was actually originally in Rage. That got cut out. So I don't like to throw it away. If enough of these scenes are standalone stories on their own, that's when they become novellas. Blood War Fight had about 2 or 3 scenes that were flashbacks that I was using to associate the Declan Kinner and the Shane Grass characters and their backgrounds and why they were so interrelated very quickly in the story. Those had to get cut out as well because it didn't fit well bouncing back and forth to before the war, void of the war, to after the war. So all of that before the war character development that was done for those guys ended up going into the prequels themselves.
Okay. So Blood War is clearly part of the series. I know because it says so on the Sacred Amazon, and Bezos would never lie to us. So there are currently 4 books out in the series, but is their story done? Will there be more from these characters? What do you see coming next?
Yes, there's, well, book 5, when Alliances comes out, that is going to end the main line of the current story arc. There's 3 continuing sequels outside of there, which will be very evident in the last part of Blood War Alliances where those could go. Some of the characters may be in them, some of them may not. There's named characters even die quite frequently in Blood Wars. So of the principal characters, without being a spoiler, but as a teaser, I will say not all of the people you think would live past the end of the story will.
I never think any of your characters are going to live. So I'm good.
Oh, Tara lasted like half a chapter, I think, and I loved her character. She was in Fight. She was a character, a friend of ours that we know that really wanted to be into the book. So I actually wrote her into there. And this is one of those characters you didn't want to kill, but you had to kill because you told the person you were redshirting them to begin with. But when you're writing the scene, it kind of expanded and expanded because I really thought the character was cool. And then when I had her face ripped off by demonic spider creatures and chewed by, their little stomach mouse, then I said, well, she's not.
Doesn't she have a spider phobia?
I don't know. No, that's how she died.
Does now.
It said she wanted to die a horrible death. So, yeah.
Okay.
Always a positive thing to add to a book. I can approve of that.
So,
but she died fighting, though. She went out, gun in hand, and giant face-devouring demon spider ripping apart her head.
So, we talked some about the world, and every universe has its own internally consistent science, technology, and magic. What kind of tech can we expect out of the book? And then we'll talk a bit more about the magic afterwards.
Okay, so the tech is interesting. The tech develops in Betray. So we talked about it in Rage, and then we go back into Fight. So when magic first appears, what they had realized is some of the technology that we use was inefficient. Basically, think about an EMP bubble over a battlefield, which caused a lot of issues with modern technology, aircraft. And one of the reasons I had done that is I needed an equalizer to prevent, hey, just strafing Apaches and B-52s and F-35s coming in and level everything. So I needed to make it something of a viable battlefield. But that technology matures as the war goes on, and we realize, hey, we can use non-electrical base attacks in non-kinetic forms, basically ways to use field artillery, ways to use rail guns, the ability in Betray as the humans learn how to use and industrialize magic changes some of the efficiencies and ratios. I actually have a series of characters inside of there, which are actually government scientists that work for the bad guy in the first two books themselves and in the labs. And what they're doing is they're taking railgun technology, battery capacitors, things like that. Railguns are great if you've got a nuclear carrier or something like that can power all this too. So how can I put a Gatling gun railgun system, into two semi-tractor trailer trucks that can park next to each other? One was a giant capacitor set of batteries that would normally fill up a warehouse. How can I magically enhance that to shrink that into and essentially power a Gatling gun that's shooting rail guns, because it's a direct kinetic attack, no electrics, and just shooting tungsten rods at a demonic portal. So that really comes out in Betray, how I'm taking modern technology with the enhancements. And then you start getting in a little more into the fantasy realm. Railguns are not Gatling guns, but I think Gatling guns are cool. So I wanted to make a railgun that was also a Gatling gun, so it could fire faster and just be shit ass cooler, So I don't want to just punch a hole in a building. I want to level a skyscraper with a railgun, a Gatling gun railgun system. So I had to build one. And I had to throw a little magic in there to make it work.
With everything that you built for this universe, the magic, the science, the tech, what would you keep and use? Like, if you could pick one thing and be like, that's mine, it's real, it's here, what would it be?
It would be the vulture carbine used by the demon hunters. So, and what's funny, I wanted a carbine, something small to carry. If you've imagine, JR probably has. Have you ever seen a high point 45 caliber carbine?
I have.
If you have, they are notoriously one of the ugliest guns ever manufactured by anybody in the history of humanity. But it looks and feels like it was created out of old Russian tractor parts and stamped. It's made in America, by the way, though. But once you run out of ammo, you can beat an elephant to death with this thing. So what I needed was a weapon to survive an apocalyptic battlefield, and I saw a picture of it. So that was the picture I kind of had in my mind inside of there, and I made some enhancements and all that, and so it was a little more combat efficient inside of there. So throughout the entirety of the book, all the non-demon hunter and Declan Kenner is the only one left who is still carrying this old war gun. It's like it's a travesty of history to all the current military people, and even the other war survivors don't really carry it around. He still carries it around, and is a point of contention to every other character in the book that he carries this heavy, ugly ass piece of shit into every fight he ever goes into, until they finally manage to get him to, well, I don't want to say what happens, but there was love lost and love regained in the story. See, I have some kissy stuff in there, although it's about him and this really ugly, heavy, nasty looking gun.
Hey, love is blind.
What I would have.
Love is blind.
Yeah. So he loses love, he regains love.
So how would you abuse the tech? what would you do with that?
How would I abuse it? I would use the enhanced munitions that come out later in the book. So I could take that carbine and blow a hole through a 70-ton main battle tank at like a mile away. Completely ridiculously against all laws of physics. But hey, it's militarized urban fantasy magic.
There you go. So we have fantastic creatures in your universe. But can you tell us a bit about how you went about finagling them, inspiring them, and making them your own?
Yep. So what I wanted to do, and try not to do too many spoilers here, I wanted the demonic creatures that are encountered throughout the stories to have some vague semblance to something that you would encounter on Earth. And there's a rationale to think about portals, portal universes, things like that. Are they the same? Are they different? Is it the same universe, just a different way? I want you to start thinking about those things. So every demonic creature, including the giant demon battle rhinos, which are actually in Blood War fight, every creature has some similar corresponding cousin, if you want to say, that you would go on Earth. And one, it helps me as a writer help the reader identify what it is I'm talking about without having to go into 17 pages of explanations. If the character can say, this damn thing looks like a giant mutated rhinoceros with spikes coming out the side and armor growing out of its legs or something like that, it helps speeds up the storytelling a little bit. But there's a reason for that. But every demonic creature throughout the entire story, and there's a reason why, has a corresponding Earth construct.
Okay.
And meaner and scarier, and usually more legs and claws.
Always a good thing. All right. So with that note, clearly this interview is winding down. We're at the hour and 26-minute mark. So well done. You kept us talking. Before we wrap this up, was there anything about Blood War Rage or the Blood War series in general that we didn't ask before we wrap it?
We didn't talk a whole lot about my co-author, but she's been on the show as well, Mel Todd. She has a great series of books too. Definitely check those out with her urban fantasy as well as her science fiction inside of there. I've already got ideas. My next series after Blood War runs its course is going to be more military science fiction. Like I said before, military science fiction and humor. I really like the humorous dialogue inside of there. So, kind of Eureka meets Space Force meets 2001 Space Odyssey meets, Tom Clancy International Subterfuge and politics. I'm going to mash all that together into a really good story about a super giant railgun on the moon project.
Sounds fun. So how can listeners find you?
You can find me Amazon. That's where my books are. There, my author page on Facebook, which is Doug Burbey Author, as well as badashpublishing.com, the website and the blogs inside of there. I tweet through the Badash Publishing Twitter site as well. Instagram, I think only my daughter's actually my Instagram account. I'm not sure if I know the password anymore, but I'm going to get better at that now that I'm done with the school that I was sentenced to go to for last year. I'm rolling that back up. But various conventions. I attend LibertyCon, Fantasy, Dragon Con, any of those conventions inside there. I come and see me there, and I even have like little free stuff sometimes, like ribbons and bookmarks and stuff like that. Or you can look, if you're flying San Diego to Baltimore on Southwest, usually I put my bookmarks inside of all the magazines that are in the chairs in front of me. So for the whole road down, people think it's weird, but who knows? I'd give it a shot.
All right. So you can find us on our website at anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. Anchor.fm / blasters tech and tech blades. You can find us on Twitter at SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy _show. You can email the show at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. You can send hate mail to Cisca at blastersandbladespodcast.com. She loves you to tell her what she did wrong. You can
I
join us.
do nothing wrong. I do everything wrong.
You can find us on our Facebook group where all the shenanigans happen, which is facebook.com/groups/blasters and blades podcast, facebook.com/groups/ blasters and blades podcast. You can support the show at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. We promise if you put in the comment section that it's for the podcast, we will keep Cisca and Nick Garber duly intoxicated. They will
never surrender.
They will drink until their liver surrenders, and she even
Never surrender.
jumped that one. But I guess prematurity in a woman isn't as big of a deal. You can also support
our refractor time.
You can also support the show over at anchor.fm /blasters and blades podcast on a monthly recurring basis for as little as 99 cents a month. I mean, are we worth a 12-ounce can of Coke a month? I think so.
I am. I don't know about you.
I mean, I have to have something to cut the bourbon with, right?
No, it's rum and Coke, dear. Don't mess with the bourbon like that.
Beer of the month showed up yesterday, so I'm good.
All right, Doc, bring us home.
Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us with this weird Yingling lover author.
I'm a Detroit Lions fan too. Just throw that out there. I'm a Detroit Lions fan too, so
you've got some weirdness about you, love.
Yeah.
For the absent Nick Garber, the overworked J.R. Handley, I'm Cisca. This was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next time with more shenanigans, more fun, more picking on JR, more pineapple on pizza, our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and of course, everything that goes boom.